to the eNewsMoney radio show. My name is Jim Robb, and I'll be your host today on the K-Jazz Radio Network. Let's jump right into this in the news, and let's talk about Arizona news. And here was an article that was in the Cronkite News service, and it was by Jonathan Reed. Arizona's chances of climbing the economic ladder mixed study finds. This is kind of interesting, so here we go. The study by researchers at Harvard and the University of Berkeley found a child born into a Phoenix family in the bottom fifth income has a 7.8 chance of ever rising to the top fifth. Those are about average odds for the nation. In some of Arizona's Indian reservations, a child born into poverty has a 4.8 chance of rising to the top. So just let me define what that means is. The bottom fifth criteria is people making less than $25,000, and that's for one parent. The top fifth, those making more than $100,000. So interesting statistic for our state. I'd like to jump into next for Arizona. There was a special report in the Arizona Republic about our public companies in the state of Arizona and how are they doing. And so let's talk about size and from a capitalization standpoint. And Freeport McKenna, $30 billion. Republic Services, $12 billion. And you're looking at their share prices. I look at Freeport at $31 a share. Republic Services about $34.83 a share. Going down, we have Microchip Technologies, PetSmart, Pinnacle West, Sprouts, which is kind of interesting. I know they're up for, I think they're up for sale. Cole Real Estate Investments, Avnet, and First Solar, U.S. Airways, for now. Yeah, we'll see what happens with America. They turned it down, but you never know. And we get into Swift Transportation, Apollo Group, UNS Energy, Meritage Homes, Grand Canyon University, Mobile Mini in Tempe, Western Alliance Bancorp, and Knight Transportation, and LifeLock. If you take a look at this, it was in the Arizona Republic today this is Tuesday, so it's a Saturday show, on August 18th, and you can take a look at this, and it has companies that are worth $100 million to $1 billion. What I just read to you were companies that were $1 billion or more, and these are all pretty much publicly traded. The point here is that we have a lot of activity in this state that leads up to publicly traded companies, and I think they're doing pretty well. Okay, here we go. Cronkite News, all right? And this is for the state of Arizona. We're still in Arizona, folks. And I thought this was kind of interesting. They were talking about employees and of state governments and the different services and what their salaries are. So we take a look at this and we look at, first of all, Governor Brewer. Is that a good salary? Is it a bad salary? So I guess this is pretty normal for governors. We're in the bottom part of that, but her salary is only $95,000, which actually I didn't know, and I was kind of surprised about that. So, and there's only about 5 other states that are down below that, but I guess it's common for governors to take less money.
Don't we have a citizen legislature?
Oh, yes, a citizen legislature, absolutely. But here are the departments, which now it's getting kind of interesting. So these are the salaries for the state of Arizona for these departments, the heads of these departments. And there's a couple here I'd like to have this. So this is, again, for the state. Commerce Department, salary, $300,000. Higher education, $300,000. But then I'm going to get down to something which is kind of interesting. Social services, $173,000. Welfare, $173,000. Administration, $160,000. Corrections, $160,000. Fish and Wildlife, $160,000. Department of Revenue, $145,000. Budget, this is interesting. Budget, $140,000, and planning, $140,000. State Police, $139,000, and Health, $136,000. There, if you go to the site, there are a lot more than that. I read off just the top of them, but there's some other ones that were pretty good, and I wasn't in any of those. I don't know why. I checked. I double checked. Here's something, and you need to go check on this because you need to read the article because the article's too big for me to go over on the air. And what it is, It's CNN, Sean Tully, senior editor at large, and it's called A Sobering Check for the Market. Again, U.S. News and World Report and CNN. A rigorous metric called EVA says about the value of stocks, hint, it ain't pretty. The best measure of how companies perform for shareholders is a wonkish tool called economic value added, or EVA. We're going to take a little break here in a minute, but what I want to do is this EVA is a very interesting way to measure stocks as opposed to the traditional way we've been doing it for about 80 years. And you really need to get in there. I'm going to give you a little homework, so look this up and read about this, and especially if you have any bonds, you're holding stocks, very interesting to take a look at it. It's a pretty lengthy article, but it's worth taking a look at. So we're going to have a guest coming in here shortly, and it's going to be awesome. We'll be right back. My guest today is Lynne LaMaster. Let me tell you about Lynne. Lynne is the editor of eNewsAZ, Prescott eNews, Chino Valley eNews, and Prescott Valley eNews. I met Lynne a few months ago, and this is a woman that has helped to build a business in the state of Arizona. And at this time, it's online. And as I mentioned, you can go to eNewsAZ or Prescott eNews. And here's a woman that has built this by herself. She goes to all the council meetings. She interviews. She does journalism. And I thought it was just fascinating. And she lives in beautiful Prescott, Arizona. And I wanted to have a person that was a true entrepreneur on the air, and that's Lynne. So I'm going to, without any further ado, welcome Lynne to the show. Lynne, welcome to eNewsMoney.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so glad to be here.
Hey, I'm going to jump right into the first question. And here we go. So now here's the big one. Why did you start Prescott eNews and eNewsAZ, which is for the state? What did you see there? Was there something that was missing, or?
Well, I was actually working for another publication at the time that was an all-positive news website for the country. It was a national site. And I got kind of frustrated at times because there was so much positive news coming out of Prescott, and I couldn't cover it all on a national site. That would have been sort of lopsided. And so I decided that I wanted to try to start my own site, not necessarily all positive, but to try to put a different perspective on some of the news that we would see and read every day.
Let me get this straight. This is a journalist that wants to have positive news.
Yes. It doesn't mean that all stories are positive, and it doesn't mean that bad things don't happen, because we all know they do. But there are a lot of times, frequently, good aspects to a tough story. As a good example, one of our first big stories was about a high school student who was killed in a car accident. And that's really tough. And he had a single mom. He was the only child. And it's totally heartbreaking. But the good side to that story was the kids in the high school gathered around, and they knew the mom couldn't afford to pay for his funeral. And they raised $10,000 in 2 days. And that was the perspective we took the story from.
Hey, Lynne, and that's why I wanted to have you in the show. It's nice to have something that's positive once in a while. So, hey, real fast, one of the things that was kind of fascinating to me, and you started your business about 7 years ago, and we were looking at your page views, Google page views, and back then you had like 80,000 page views, and now you're at like 15 to 20 million this year. And you did that by yourself. I mean, that's kind of a fascinating growth. And so on this e-news service on the online, going online, did you see that is what you wanted to do versus a paper publication?
Oh, absolutely. I think that paper publications, first of all, there's a lot of expense involved with it. You have to have printing presses and people to run the printing presses and distribution. And there's just all sorts of logistical things that come up with it that I couldn't do as a single person doing this. But also, I think the wave of the future is going to be online. It's immediate. We can go ahead and get a story up right away. We don't have to worry about deadlines. We don't have to worry about column inches. There's all kinds of advantages to being online. Plus, we can add in video and radio and other resources that you can't do in a newspaper.
That was, if you're going back, 7 years ago, that was quite a vision.
I had done a lot of work before in actually courses online for universities and for Apple Computer too. And kind of our mantra while we were doing those was that this is not a book online. And I kind of took the same concept, and we are not a newspaper online. We are an online news website.
Interesting. And what we're going to do, I'm going to ask you one more question. We're going to take a short break. And when we get back, I'd like to get your opinion or what you see as a online news website of where you see that going in the future over the next 5 to 7 years. The other thing is I wanted to compliment you on a lot of the articles that you've put up on Prescott eNews and eNews AZ. And do you do most of the writing yourself?
Not necessarily. I have a lot of contributors from across the community that send articles to me that we go ahead, we run through a quick edit. Usually they're well written and we're okay with it. And plus we like to let people speak for themselves. So the edit is pretty much for basic spelling and grammar errors, maybe some punctuation here and there. And then we will put those contributions up as they're written. Other writing I do myself. And it's pretty fun, and we have a good time.
Hey, we're going to take a short break. We're going to be right back with Lynne LaMaster. You're listening to eNewsMoney. I'm your host, Jim Robb. And hey, here's how you can get in touch with me. jrobb, R-O-B-B, at eNewsMedia.us. Whoa, baby. eNewsMedia.us, Tom. How about that, man? So anyhow, this is the new eNewsMoney radio show on the K-Jazz Radio Network. It's been kind of an interesting conversation about an online news website, not necessarily an online news service. So, Lynn, we're going to jump right into this. Before the break, we were kind of talking about where do you see this going in this medium, this online news website? Is that going to be the new Facebook, or is that where people are going to go for information?
I think people are going to go for information. I think that the world of news gathering and news reading is changing rapidly. There's going to be far more diverse sources available to people now. You can see that in BBC. You can see what's happening on the BBC network. Al Jazeera just started a news network this week. So you'll have a lot more diverse perspectives on your news and sources, which can be a good thing. I think you're going to see more citizen reporters. I think you're going to see more content and more resources in your news, PDFs, graphs, video, audio, all sorts of things like that. Some of the negatives are going to be, it's going to be tough at times to figure out which is correct. There may be opposing views and opposing statements on the news, and it's going to be tough to figure out which is right. So the readers are going to have to become a lot more discerning too.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. So if you take a look at a quote unquote a paper news service, so the Wall Street Journal or USA Today, when they go out and they post an article, is there a check and balance to that? And are you saying on the online news website that there isn't a check and balance to that? I mean, I don't know. That's a question more than anything.
There certainly will be checks and balances depending on the editorial boards of each publication. Somebody writing a blog, that may be harder to check and balance. Somebody they can still be right. Somebody setting up a tweet. Are you going to have an editor checking the tweet beforehand? Probably not. Are they still right? They can be. Maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. So, like I said, readers will have to be discerning, and they'll have to cross-reference and make sure that there's documentation to back up the information. Respectable news sources will still have editorial boards and still have people overseeing your facts. But even still, especially in a fast-breaking story, you're going to get information that's incorrect. For instance, with the hot shots, at first it was reported that 18 had passed away, and but as we all know, it was 19. So people will just have to be, like I said, very discerning about what they read and who they go to on a regular basis.
Hey, let me ask you another question, and this one's a little bit different, but I think it relates to everything that you're trying to do. As we look at social and casual gaming, get ready for this one. As we look at social and casual gaming, such as Angry Birds and Farmville and all these hundreds of millions of people are playing, do you see that industry using games to go onto like a e-news website to create knowledge or games about certain topics? And do you see that happening, or is that just something that's just too silly?
No, I absolutely can see that. People will learn more effectively when they're engaged, and a lot of times games engage the creativity and the imagination and the interest through the fact that they're games. I'm sure that I'm better at math than I would have been if I had learned to play pinochle with my grandmother. That being said, so for instance, there could be a game that could teach a young couple what they need to do to purchase a new home, for example. Do they have enough money saved aside for their down payment? Is their credit score high enough? Are they realistic in the home they want to purchase? Those sorts of things you could easily create an online game for that would be both educational and still of interest. You could even tie in things like Zillow and online real estate websites to pick the house that the couple wanted, for example.
Okay, so it would roll right over to them then.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. And again, I think one of the things that's fascinating to me about the online news is that you don't have a deadline. So in other words, if you want to post something at midnight, you can post something at midnight if you want to, right?
Oh, absolutely, and I have. So, and we can also, suppose you're driving down the road and there's a car accident there and you want to warn people to be careful of the traffic. You can throw up a quick tweet, and that can be on your homepage of your website, which it is on the, like on Prescott News, for example. Those kind of tweets are on the homepage. So people can keep that as kind of a running commentary on breaking news right at the time.
That's that to me is unbelievable. So, hey, Lynn, we are going to. Okay, Lynn, here's a new question. I was reading about the Washington Post, and obviously Jeff Bezos bought that for. He had to go into his wallet because he keeps about $250 million in there. Because when you have $28 billion, you always keep $250 million in your wallet, so you have a little spending money. What was interesting to me, and because you have this eNews online website, was that I looked at the valuation of what Bezos paid and how they really took a look at this, and it was kind of interesting to me. I didn't understand this. So they had, I believe, the Huffington Post, or I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Bezos, okay, here we go. He bought the Washington Post, right? And then I'm talking about I forgot who bought the Huffington Post. That was AOL.
Right.
Okay, I'm back. So we'll go. Let's leave the Washington Post over here. I'm going to shift over to the Huffington Post that was bought by AOL. The thing that fascinated me about the Huffington Post, or I got confused there. I mean, it's only money, and was that they had 25 million quote unquote unique viewers, and they valued that at $12 per viewer, and it sold for $315 million. So when we talk about page views, and we talk, and we get this a lot, and you talk about unique viewers, what are we talking about there? What does that really mean?
Well, a page view is when somebody looks at the page of a website. And the unique viewers are people that come to see the site that are, individuals. Now, a lot of times that is tracked by what's called an IP address, and usually computers, say in your home, maybe you have 3 computers, usually those computers will all use the same IP address. So what's considered a unique viewer could actually be in a family of 4, maybe all 4 people went to that website. So that's a little difficult to track as far as that goes. And page views are also good to look at from the standpoint, you don't want somebody coming to your site once and never coming back. You want to have content that's compelling, that has them coming back over and over and over again. And so at Prescott eNews and eNews AZ and Chino and Prescott Valley, we always want to have a lot of people coming, but we want to make sure they're coming back too.
Is it more difficult? So if I look at a paper, and I'm going to do this fast, but if I look at a paper, and so I've got a time constraints, I have this, I have that, but the articles that they do, they can only do so many because of the time constraints. You look at an online, you could put 100 new stories up. So is it harder because you have to do more content and refresh it more than you do in a paper?
Well, it depends on how you do your content. If you're doing short little pieces, a couple paragraphs here or there, that's not so bad. But if you're doing the in-depth coverage, where you do bring in your video and you bring in audio interviews and you dig through PDFs and you create the artwork to go with that and copies of graphs and that sort of thing from a PDF, those stories can be pretty time intensive.
Hey, Lynn, I've got to interrupt you here. We got 20 seconds left. 10, and I wanted to thank you for being on the show today. It was very informative, and wishing you and eNews nothing but success. And would you come back?
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Lynn. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
National news. Here we go. I've got to bring this up, and it's out of the Wall Street Journal, and it's by Dan Fitzpatrick and Devlin Barrett. And here we go again. Justice probes J.P. Morgan Chase. And you talk about an institution that's in trouble. And we did this a couple of weeks ago, but here's this one. Here's a new one. Manipulated U.S. energy markets. J.P. Morgan paid $410 million to settle allegations raised by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Bank manipulated markets in California and the Midwest. There are 6 other ongoing investigations of J.P. Morgan already in the works. And so here's one, and I've only got about a minute left, but this just blows me away. So they're getting investigated for this one. Listen to this. This is, and all of you that have children and the kids are in college and they want to come out, you might want to call J.P. Morgan. It's Wall Street Journal, Nepotism, When Is It a Crime? By Joe Plazola and Christopher Matthews. An inquiry, U.S. securities regulators into whether J.P. Morgan Chase hired the children of some Chinese officials to win business. Risks around giving jobs to the well-connected. And this goes on. It's Chrysler, Daimler, and for hiring practices. But I was thinking about something as this was going on. And I got it. We all, if you're well connected, your kid gets a job, and I'm going to give you, I'll put money in your accounts and all that kind of good stuff. But I was thinking, actually, even from a presidential standpoint, when you look at a lot of our elected officials, when they leave public office, they go to work for companies and broker deals all around the world. And I know of one president, and you're talking about he's worth about $80 million now. And, so does nepotism is political as well as not just the business world. But it's an interesting topic to think about. And that's your thought for the weekend. Is that good or is that bad? So anyhow, folks, here's what I want to say. Thank you for listening to eNewsMoney. Again, my name is Jim Robb. I'm your host. It's jrobb@enewsmedia.us. And I want to thank the K-Jazz Radio Network for letting me be on the air. And we will be back next Saturday with another show. Thanks.
eNewsMoney is produced for the K-Jazz Radio Network by Folk Sessions Productions.